Welcome to the video edition of The Fourth Curtain, featuring this week's interview. Catch the extended audio version with Alex and Aaron's commentary wherever you get your podcasts. On with the show.
Welcome to The Fourth Curtain, friends. Today is a very special episode because we're joined by one of the great architects of Blizzard Entertainment and really one of the most influential creative leaders in the history of PC games, Mr. Rob Pardo. Hey, Rob, how you doing? Good to see you.
Hey, how's it going?
You have quite an impressive array of stuff.
Yeah, I was looking at it. I was like, nah, what?
Yeah, I have quite the for sure.
I mean, it is almost like this is a huge compliment, but it's like a complete nerd canon all the way from...
Yeah.
Actually, wait, do you have much Nintendo stuff up there? I'm trying to see.
Let me see what you're looking at. Yeah, I do have some Nintendo stuff. I have my Link right here.
Oh, yeah, that's a giant
Animal
Yoshi.
Crossing, too.
Yeah, okay.
One of my favorite games of all time is my Animal Crossing. Can't quite see that.
Oh, that's a little above frame. Listener, we're looking at, if you're not watching, okay, look at that. Yeah, you got some great gear back there. And that's, shoot, why am I blanking on Tim?
You see the
is that
Boba Fett?
from Tim Schafer's game, the Day of the Dead guy?
Which one? Oh, no, that's from Brawl Stars, actually.
Oh, right. Okay.
Great art on that
All
one.
right. Sorry. Huge.
Actually, my favorite ones, I'll plug my wife for a second. She makes these little toys.
Oh, sweet.
Like on Etsy?
These are adorable.
Hey,
wait, is that Bonfire related?
You know, actually, it's funny. They are not Bonfire related, but the first one she did was a Christmas gift to Bonfire employees. Actually, I'll show you. It's the first one she made, and this kicked off the whole collection.
Oh, wow. Is that glass?
No, it's resin.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
super
Yeah,
cool.
so she goes by the handle Arctic Fox, and she goes out to different conventions, and she has all kinds of cool customs too with other artists now. But she works right here out of the house, so she has like a whole workshop.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a cool thing. She does the 3D printing. She makes the molds. She casts them in resin. Sometimes does a paint job on the tail end of it. Yeah, it's really cool.
Right on. What a creative
she
couple,
started.
and yeah, I love that.
Started by making toys like this. So she made.
Wait, who made that?
This is my wife made it.
Wow,
Dude, that's awesome. I was looking at that. I'm like, oh, I wonder if.
All right, if you're not watching on
buy it?
YouTube and you're just listening, that's the pea shooter from Plants vs Zombies, and
Yeah.
it's like bigger than a football. That's super cool. All right, we're not even halfway through the intro. Okay, let's
Can I
keep
go
going.
through my stuff too? Oh, just kidding.
No, Aaron, that's fine. All right, Rob, you spent nearly 17 years. I'm just doing math here off the internet. 17 years at Blizzard. Helped shape an absurd run. This is an absurd. I did some napkin math on this too. Absurd run of games from StarCraft, Warcraft, World of Warcraft, Diablo, eventually becoming chief creative officer. Just this audience, let's just do some napkin math. Let's say we have 50,000 listeners and everybody here has spent about 20 hours in your games. That's 1 million hours, Rob. That's 128 years of entertainment. Thank you for that. What a gift. These days, Rob is the founder and CEO of Bonfire Studios, where I think you must be about 10 years in.
Yep, we just passed our 10-year anniversary this year.
Wow, what a milestone. Working on the new game, Arkheron. Did I pronounce it right?
You did. Good job. I always tell people, just imagine the H is silent when you pronounce it. You're good.
Right on. And that is out. That's in a beta now, isn't it?
We're kind of in a pre-beta state.
Pre-beta,
we did
okay.
our Next Fest demo back in February, and we are doing small, play testing internally and with some external community right now. But we're hoping to get to more of a true beta state a little bit later in the summer.
Right on. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And welcome. So let's see where to start. How did you get introduced to Blizzard back in the day, and when was that?
Lost Spiky.
Well, I'll take you through the brief history, and we can always go back further. But I got into the industry, I think it was in 93, 94 at Interplay Productions.
Oh, right on.
So, and then when I came into Interplay, it was still in the early days. As far as watching your guys' interview with Fergus, and that took me back a little bit because I was a contemporary of Fergus back at Interplay. We knew
Right
Bryen.
Yeah, we had Bryen on too. What an incredible group of it's just foundational group,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, Interplay and Virgin, they're very foundational to the game industry and really, especially the Orange County game industry.
Yeah.
But probably the first time I met anyone from the Blizzard team was actually playing roller hockey for the Interplay hockey team. I always playing against the Blizzard guys.
Right on. How was the Blizzard roller hockey team? Were they any good? How'd you guys do?
Oh, real life hockey?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a game. Real life hockey. Okay.
No, back then.
Were you guys playing full contact, body checking and stuff, or was it just
it's an adult recreational league?
Okay, all right.
I mean, it's still physical because it's a physical sport, but you're not allowed to do full body checking or anything like that.
Okay.
Well, I got really into hockey when I was working retail when I was still going to college because Wayne Gretzky had just got traded to the Kings.
Oh yeah, right on.
I just got really into it, and I'm told my wife at the time, it's I'm going to learn how to play hockey or learn how to ice skate tomorrow. And I bought a whole bunch of hockey gear ready to go sign up for ice skating lessons. And then I
really
learned how to play. Yeah.
And you actually followed through and learned how to skate? And okay. Yep. Is this a Rob sort of way? Is this the way for you? You see something, you're I want to do that. And then you just go do it.
Sometimes my dad was super competitive and always wanted his kids to be professional athletes. So, I kind of was raised in an environment if I had to learn every sport. So I grew up pretty competitive with games and with sports and things like that. And then, so as an adult, I wasn't intimidated by taking on a new sport, even though I will say hockey is probably the toughest sport I've ever learned how to play.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I can imagine. You got to skate. It's very physical.
Yeah. On ice.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you met some Blizzard guys playing roller hockey.
That's the first time I played them. And the Interplay team was definitely a lot better than the Blizzard team at the time. So
I was making note of that.
But I didn't know them that well. And then
you were on the Interplay team, right?
Yeah, I was on the Interplay team at the time.
Okay.
Well, obviously, later on, I joined the Blizzard team when I joined it.
Then things changed.
Then the Blizzard team was better then, right?
Yeah. But there's this funny story of probably when I first got some notoriety with some people over at Blizzard, other than, of course, beating him at roller hockey, was, I started getting to know Bryen Fargo really well. And at the time, Command and Conquer had come out and Warcraft 2 had come out. And, everyone at Interplay was playing both games. And I started getting a lot of notoriety for being one of the best Warcraft 2 players. Mm. And Bryen was so impressed with my skills. He, was talking to the head of the 3D department, Rob Nessler at the time. And, Rob was really impressed with one of his top players on his department, which is Kevin Beardsley. So they decided to bet each other who was better at Warcraft 2. So they arranged us to play a best out of 3 against each other, and they were betting on the outcome.
That's okay.
And when you're I don't know, I was probably Interplay maybe a year at that time, first job in the game industry. It's pretty intimidating when the CEO of the company is betting on you against.
Yeah,
what were you doing?
You better win.
What were you doing that first year at Interplay?
I'm sorry?
What was your role?
My role, so I came up, I started as a game tester. And actually going back to the Obsidian thing a little bit. So the way I learned about Interplay and even knew that there's a job there was I was managing a software etc. store. And my assistant manager got a job at Interplay in the game testing department. And I'm like, hey, Darren, can you get me a job over there? That'd be cool. Because I was still going to college. So I was like, hey, this seems like a good opportunity. So he got me a job there. And the Darren I'm referring to as Darren Monahan ends up being one of the founders of Obsidian. So I heard again so it's kind of funny how everything gets interconnected pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a lot of folks get their start coming up through test. What a great way to get into.
They did. I feel like it's harder to do nowadays, but definitely 30 years ago, that was a pretty viable entry path.
Software, etc., I would say would be your start, right? Surrounded by games and
yeah, for sure. I grew up as an arcade rat, I played D&D pretty early on. I played, I was in the arcade all the time. Before I got my own PC, I would actually still use my allowance and buy computer games and then talk the salespeople and let me install it and play it in the afternoons, which was a great deal for them because I was demoing their game for them. And for me, I got to play the games. And eventually I talked my grandparents into buying me my first computer, which is an Apple IIc.
Nice.
Right on. Okay. Do you remember were you playing like Wolfenstein? Was there a Wolfenstein?
That was a little
2D
later.
was on Apple
Yeah,
II,
I would
right?
say like some of the early games there were like those old RPGs like Wizardry and Ultima series. Those were kind of the big hotness.
Right on. Okay. Well, so actually, this is interesting because I remember Software Etc. We used to sell, our games in a retail there. Back in the day, kids, when you would have to go to a store and buy a physical game.
Right.
I know it's very.
Did they turn into Funko Land or something like that?
Software Etc. I think they merged with Babbage's. And then I think the whole thing went out of business. They probably went out of business or they got bought by somebody. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like everything merged into GameStop at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, they just left all the stuff up.
Total aside, my daughter took a financial literacy class in high school, and she comes home and she's like, "Hey, do you know all about meme stocks?" And I'm like, what are they teaching you?
I know, right?
GameStop. Should we buy GameStop stock? I'm like, no, don't do it. All right. So you grew up in SoCal. You grew up in Orange County?
Mostly. I mean, I originally was up in Sacramento, and then when my mother got promoted in her job, she worked for the phone company for pretty much her whole career, like I think 40 plus years. She moved us down to Southern California for promotion down here, but that was pretty much since I was 10 or 11. So most of the time I've been down in Orange County.
Yeah. And what was what was young Rob like? I mean, you were playing D&D. You were begging your parents for the PC, which eventually happened at some point. What else was going on? It sounds like you were into sports. So were you kind of like a jock in high school, or were you a nerd? Were you both?
I was a little bit of both. I would say once I get to high school, I was not playing as much organized sports. I kind of played a little bit my freshman year, but I think because my interests become so much more about games and Dungeons and Dragons, kind of the more nerdy geek crowd, I just didn't fit as much with the, kind of the more jock crowd, even though I still love sports. It just didn't feel like something I was really going to get into as much in high school. Weirdly, my high school, which is Costa Mesa High School, had a farm program. So we had a full-blown farm on the property. So I joined the farm program and was in Future Farmers of America through high school.
Oh, cool.
So I raised pigs and lambs, and it was actually really fun in high school because, before and after school every day, you kind of get to go out to the whole farm area and just hang out with your buddies and do stuff and learn how to drive a tractor before I drove a car.
That's awesome. My school didn't have any of that.
Definitely builds character.
Yeah.
Sure.
I always grow a vegetable garden every year, and it's kind of like
3 tomatoes.
I grow some really tasty tomatoes, but I think with all the effort and everything I put in, they're probably like $30 tomatoes. Yeah. I should have gone to farm school. Okay. Well, so what did you think you wanted to do? Like when you were in high school, looking out at the future, were you like, do you have any idea?
Honestly, I didn't really have too much of an idea other than I think that my dream at that point was maybe to direct film. It's like, I think a lot of people in kind of our generation, one of the best, most inspiring film was like Star Wars. I think pretty much ever after Star Wars and then all the other Spielberg films and kind of that era of the early 80s, just really expanded my imagination. And, with all the other things that are coming out, like Dungeons and Dragons and video games, I think very much, I wanted to build worlds, either sci-fi or fantasy. And, I was, super inspired and looked up to people like George Lucas and Spielberg. So I was thinking maybe I'd do that path. Which seemed like honestly an impossible goal. It's like again, there's doesn't really lay out for you like, how do you get a career in film or something like that. But, I had a couple other friends that really want to do that. But that was kind of more dreamer me. I don't know if I was really taking the steps to get into that.
In high school while you're doing the pig farming?
And then also like once I started trying to figure out college, because after I got out of high school, I, took me some time because I was pretty much working full time from the time I was an adult. So, which, it's a bit challenging to also balance college. So I was kind of messing around with community college for a couple years, eventually got a little more serious and finished that degree, and then went on to UCI to finish my 4-year degree. And once I got into UCI, I was starting to imagine, okay, well, I was taking a degree called social ecology. That was the school, and then it was with an emphasis in criminology, law, and society. So, I started thinking,
maybe like pre-law kind of thing?
Yeah, going to law school was kind of what I was starting to think.
Ron, thank you for not becoming a lawyer.
You were like an accident lawyer or something, Oh, man.
I grew up, I didn't come from means or anything. It's like a lot of my family had been career military. My parents were divorced. So, I didn't really know how to build a career or what that meant. So that just seemed straightforward,
Yeah. And so, I mean, this is a legit question. So sounds like you were sort of, kind of organically evolving your path through, community college and then UCI, and you have this major, and we haven't gotten to steps in between here and there, but you obviously end up in a very different place. And I'm kind of curious if at some point along that journey, you had any like deliberate decisions to not do what maybe somebody expected, or were there just no expectations and you were just trying to absorb the world and just see what felt good in the gut? Or
I would say I probably grew up without a lot of expectations, really. It's like, I think it's probably more in the latchkey generation to some extent. It's like
laissez-faire parenting.
Yeah, kind of. My mom, both my mom and dad, they were in high school when my mom got pregnant, right? And then my grandfather was career military, and he had been stationed at Boston, and then he got restationed back out to Sacramento. So my mom obviously moved with him. And then my dad decided to do the right thing, drive cross country and marry her. But, those marriages don't always last. And, that they kind of broke up pretty early, but it just meant they were both kids. So when I was a little kid, they were young adult kids. So they were still figuring out their lives. My dad eventually got in the military, so I'd see him off and on for a while, even though he always tried to be connected. But, when you're in the military, you don't always get to choose things. Yeah. My mom, she was an extremely hard worker. She'd work sometimes 80 hours a week to get overtime. But it just left I didn't have a lot of conventional parenting or mentorship.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a lot of work ethic. You were saying you always had a job, through college.
I was pretty much working since I was probably 13, 14.
Yeah. What was your first job?
My first job was actually working for a Mexican couple that sold plants at the Costa Mesa swap meet every weekend.
Dude, that's
right on.
Yeah.
So I would go help them on Saturday and Sundays. I'd show up at 5:30 a.m. and help unload the truck of the plants and help sell house plants and load them up. And then, it's a
real
great
work. Real work.
What'd you do with the money? What'd you do with the money? Were you buying games or what were you
doing? Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's fast forward back up here a little bit. So you're at UCI, you're in a program where you're learning about was it law, human, and self, something like that, intellectual
social ecology
stuff. Social
ecology is actually kind of an interesting school because it's combining elements of psychology, sociology, anthropology, environmental science. So it's kind of trying to look more big picture at kind of humans and society. And it's one of those weird things that obviously it's not obvious where you go with a degree in social ecology. But I will say, looking back on it, I think it was really helpful for a game designer.
I was going to say, it does sound like
with
getting a sense for how people think and what sort of drives behavior is sort of core to game design. Very cool. Very cool. Okay. And then you were at Software Etc. during your time at UCI, and that's how you met the Interplay folks, end up as a tester over there. Get on the roller hockey team.
I was probably just for 3 or 4 months, and then I became like an assistant line producer, and then kind of went up from there.
Ooh, okay. So you went up the production track.
Yes.
Oh, and what about at the Software Etc.? How'd you get that gig? Were you like, did they just like, hey, you're always here?
You just walk in and they're like, hey,
no,
you know how to use a computer?
I was, working jobs since I was 14. Like, that was off the books. But as soon as I could actually get a paycheck and pay taxes, I was doing 15 and a half for Italian Delicatessen. Then I worked for a movie theater for a year or two, and then I worked for a music store. So I was doing a lot of these retail jobs.
But you were looking for those. Like, you didn't go apply at the Gap.
Correct.
Like, you were like, I want to work at the theater because it's awesome to be there. I want to work at Software Etc. So you wanted to be be there, and you
want to work at places where you have an interest because it's just more fun.
Hey, was that Software Etc. in a mall?
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
You guys miss the mall? Do you guys miss it? Do you still have a mall anywhere? Is there a mall? You probably have a mall down near you.
Yeah, Orange County, we have 2 types of malls. We have the malls that are actually super bougie, and it's got all the really high-end luxury stores, because that seems the only way to be successful with a mall anymore is you have to go all in on luxury. And then we have the zombie malls, which are very sad because they have like a couple stores.
Good for photo ref.
And, yeah.
I heard, I don't know if this is true, and this is a total aside, so we'll just spend like 2 seconds on it. I think Epic Games bought the mall in Raleigh to move their headquarters into during the pandemic.
Well, I think I read something about that too.
That's kind of cool.
I don't think they ever did it. Okay. All right. So what happens next? What happened next? You're at Interplay. Wait. What happened to the bet? Did you win the CNC game? Wait, no, was it CNC or Warcraft?
It was Warcraft.
It was Warcraft. Sorry. Did you win the Warcraft 2 game?
Well, of course.
Of course.
Yeah, the guy I was playing, Kevin Beardsley, he was phenomenal at the game too. The thing that was actually kind of funny about it though was, like, I don't know how much you guys were into Warcraft 2 back in the day, but there is a way to play online, through Kali, the Kali protocol, which kind of tricks your computer and you think you're playing on a LAN, but it's kind of the early version of be able to play multiplayer online games through Kali. And, so I was playing a lot online against, a lot of really, really good players, even the term smurfing actually comes from the old Warcraft 2 community. And there was a bunch of players that got fed up with no one would take games with them. So they started calling themselves Smurfs. Even where the term comes from, which is kind of funny. But anyways, Warcraft 2, there were some degenerate strategies you could do that were kind of all in. You could do something like what's called a grunt rush. So you just kind of really optimize to get a couple grunts as early as possible and send in the opponent. And if the other person wasn't also doing the degenerate strategy, then you would lose. So it was really common to have these different, gentleman rules like, oh, do you want to play over rules or disallow this strategy or that strategy? So the first thing I asked Kevin, our best 3, was like, oh, do you want any rules? And he's like, no rules. And I'm like,
and you're like,
oh, you're like, big mistake, buddy.
No, actually, I thought the opposite. I'm like, oh crap, he's going to grunt rush me.
Okay.
Well, that's literally what I thought, because I'm like, oh, anyone that says no rules on Kali, you better be ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you pulled out all the tricks.
So the first game, I grunt rushed him, and it was over in 5 minutes.
Of course. Okay.
So then the second game, we got to pick the map, and he picked Garden of War. And the thing that I learned was the 3D art department in Interplay, they generally only play Garden of War. because they always like to play 8-player FFA games with the whole art department, and all they would play is Garden of War. And Kevin was like a ogre bloodlust specialist on Garden of War. So we played Garden of War, and we went for a while. It was a longer game, but he eventually won the second game. And then the third game, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pick the map. So I'm going to pick a Navy map. And sure enough, he didn't even know how to play Navy. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
very strategic in how I approach the matches. But
Smart.
Messed up.
You are competitive and smart. It's a dangerous combination.
Well, it's funny because like even with Warcraft 2, it's like I like to explore all the units, and even though I always had a good competitive strategic mind to know, let's say, hey, orcs are a little broken because of bloodlust, but I would still love to play humans. I'd love to play the Navy maps just because of the variety. And I think, again, it ended up serving me well much later when I started my design career and worked on StarCraft.
Right. Yeah. So you must have had all of that as a player, had all of that experience in mind when you were thinking about balance and unit design and map layouts and all that kind of stuff. Super cool.
And StarCraft was the first game, right? StarCraft.
That was the first one I worked on as a designer. So yeah.
Okay.
So I'll catch you. So
okay. Well, I just got a question real quick. You have a lot of credits on a lot of the older games. Did you get those because of the remasters?
No.
Or like
the first game at Blizzard. Oh, it depends on which ones you're talking about. When I joined Blizzard in '97 for StarCraft, so my era was basically StarCraft 1. And then I left shortly before Overwatch came out, but I was obviously very involved in that game as well. So that's kind of my era where I had active contribution.
Okay.
So yeah, if it was Lost Vikings or something like that, yeah, I never touched Lost Vikings.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, oh wow, Lost Vikings, cool. Okay.
No, that was probably, we did, we got in this habit at Blizzard after a while because it became so sensitive who was in the credits and not in the credits. We just started putting the whole company in the credits.
That's cool.
Yeah. But I would say I have no creative contribution to Lost Vikings.
So you got, how did you go from Interplay to Blizzard then? Besides, you meeting the folks.
Yeah. So, it was a really interesting era at that point of the game industry because there's just so many things happening, so many games. Like Fallout was at Interplay, Stonekeep was getting made, Bard's Tale. They're talking about doing another one of those, and then Interplay was also one of the early big publishers. So we were publishing Blizzard games, we were publishing BioWare, Parallax, Shiny, like, a lot of these companies, they were getting published there. And I was a third-party producer. So I was managing some of those relationships and products. And Interplay was trying to, expand. I think, again, in hindsight, probably too aggressively, but they were creating all these different departments. They created the Black Isle Games department, which eventually Fergus left to form Obsidian. And then the department I was in was formed around this guy, Mark Nasha, who had a big arcade gaming background, and he created this arcade action division. And then I ended up being in that division. But he wasn't there too long. He ended up wanting to go do his own startup with a couple people that he'd worked with previously, and he recruited me there, which was called Point of View. So it seemed very exciting to go to kind of a startup, and I was going to be able to be more of a producer designer, actually do more first party development, where because a lot of what I've been doing previously in Interplay was managing external development. So actually being able to get my hands dirty seemed very exciting. And one of the things we did while we're there was, we're always pitching game concepts. So one of the game concepts that I wrote up was an RTS game that was more around a, Asian fantasy mythology. And then we pitched it to Blizzard. So Alan Adham and Bill Roper came out to Point of View. We pitched the game to them, the design, all the units. They ended up declining us. I don't think they were really doing a lot of stuff, but they were always interested to see what was out there. And then Alan called me up afterwards and wanted to meet. So we had lunch, and he kind of tried to recruit me.
He's a very convincing guy.
Oh, I know. Alan, I'll for sure say he's had the biggest mentor impact on me of anybody in my career. But anyways, The thing, though, I had to admit to him was I'm actually not a software engineer. So I don't put pixels on screen. And I think that kind of cooled him off a little bit and how excited he was. And I was, I didn't really want to bounce on Mark or anything. But, something like 6 months later, it kind of became clear, like I wasn't really fitting in that well point of view and what they want to do, because they were doing pretty good at the work for hire work, like that was their bread and butter. And I think they were getting good profit margin and doing pretty well, and doing originals and things like that was probably a little bit too risky. And that's what I was pushing for. And, I also didn't know what the fuck I was doing. So I was probably not necessarily somebody to invest in long term when they also needed software engineers. So I was, had to find a new job. And at the time, I was also took a little bit of a break to play, Ultima Online day and night. So I was playing kind of Ultima Online at that time. But I called up Alan and I said, Alan, can we meet? I'm leaving Point of View. Do you have anything that might be interesting over there? So we talked more, and he was thinking, and he knew a bit. Obviously he knew what I was doing at Point of View, but he also had known about me from Bryen Fargo and Warcraft 2. And Bryen's one of the, I'm sure you know this about Bryen, but he loves to like brag about his people and talk about things. So I'm, to his credit, I think he spread a lot of my heroics in the game to Blizzard at the time. So I had all that going for me, I think. But Alan didn't really know what to do with me yet, because, I'm sure you remember at this point in the game industry, game design was not really a standalone profession yet. It was still kind of in the era. You had programmer designers, sometimes artist designers, or just small teams that did it. Like it was not really a thing where you had someone that couldn't put pixels on screen and all they did was game design. So it wasn't obvious what he could do with me, but I feel like he saw something in me, and they were working on StarCraft at the time. So his whole thinking was, hey, I'll bring you on. I think it's for something like $15 an hour. I'm going to put you in the QA department so you have people you can just play StarCraft with all day long. And I just want you to give me direct feedback to me. And then I'll call you up sometimes to give you assignments and stuff like that. So that's what we did. And I would play a ton of StarCraft, and I would just give him feedback at first. So, I gave him feedback on everything. I think in general, probably the most valuable feedback did end up being more around the game balance stuff, because I just had an eye for it. Mm-hmm. And then he would often call me up and just say, hey, can you jump in the game with me? Can we test out, how this unit works or that unit works? We'd sometimes end up chatting about other aspects of the game. So I think, over time, and this is a matter of let me think. I think I joined probably 6 to 9 months before StarCraft came out. I mean, it's so weird now when I think about how fast developments were back then compared to now.
Oh my gosh.
But, after the first few months, I was giving enough really good feedback. He started inviting me to what they called the strike team at the time. So, and that term has evolved a bunch, but in that era, what he would do is he kind of pulled together a steering group of just key devs. Weren't even necessarily all the official lead devs, but the devs that he felt at that moment in time could give the best kind of feedback to where the game was at. So he started pulling me into these meetings with him and Mike O'Brien, who was the architect of BattleNet, and I think Bob Fitch was in there, and James Finney, and we just, talk about the game, especially finishing the game, which, there's a lot of game balance work and all of that. And, I think I would just, fight for conviction with things that I think was important in there. And I just, over time, I think gained more and more respect. And then they moved me over to the development area. But this is where it was a little bit interesting, because Blizzard was still in the era where they didn't hire external people with experience. You had to be homegrown. And then also, because I'd been sitting in QA, people just looked at me. It's almost felt like I'd just come out of QA last week rather than 3 years ago. And it's why do we?
So it wasn't the warmest of reception, maybe?
Yeah.
We'll be right back. If you like what you're hearing, like and follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. And now, a word from our sponsors. Great games aren't just made, they're crafted. Pixel by pixel, idea by idea. Amber doesn't just develop games, Amber forges the future of play, one project at a time. From the magic makers at Disney to the tech giants at Amazon and Warner Media, the biggest names in the industry trust Amber to turn their wildest ideas into reality. Why? Because the talented teams at Amber believe in pushing every boundary, breaking every mold, and having a bit of fun while they're at it. Need a partner who knows the game and plays to win? Amber has the talent, the passion, and a global network that's ready to roll. So let's skip the loading screen and get straight to the action. Discover how Amber can power up your next project at amberstudio.com. Do you want your game to live forever? To supercharge it with immense powers of endless content, a buzzing gamer community, immortality, and coin? CurseForge for Studios, an exclusive service for visionary game developers, allows you to add safe, cross-platform mods to your game and enjoy all the benefits of user-generated content without any of the risks. With CurseForge for Studios, you can harness the creativity of our 165,000 devoted creators and the traffic of 43 million monthly gamers. You can also level up with premium mods and grant your game new revenue streams. Trusted by AAA studios, CurseForge for Studios is an immortality potion for your game. Enter studios.curseforge.com and join the UGC era. Leveling up your game dev career but not sure where to start?
Maybe you're trying to break into the industry, looking to connect with other people who are making games.
Consider joining the International Game Developers Association, the IGDA, the world's largest non-profit, member-driven professional association serving all individuals who create games.
I was in the IGDA in Chicago, met a lot of people, great way to network.
The IGDA exists to support and empower game developers around the world in achieving fulfilling and sustainable careers.
Discounts,
educational and advocacy-based resources,
mentorship,
and solidarity across 160 plus chapters.
To join the IGDA, visit igda.org/membership and use the code IGDA 4th Curtain 15, no spaces there,
to get 15% off 1- and 2-year memberships, as well as a student membership.
Joining the IGDA is a great move for your career, and as a nonprofit supporting everyone making games, it's a great move for the whole community. Join today.
And now, back to the show.
Yeah.
But that's a fascinating insight into sort of like the culture and how things work there. I mean, I assume when you show up and Alan puts you in tests and it's like, hey, play this game a ton, give me feedback directly. Alan's not... Yeah. I'm assuming, so you give a little context for the audience here. Alan was like one of the execs, founder execs of Blizzard.
He
right?
was the founder CEO. I mean,
yeah, so he wasn't actually the game director on StarCraft, right? Somebody else was like running the game, according to Alan,
it gets basically a little complicated with Alan. So Alan, what I would say is he's like that true visionary, like exec producer type. But he would at various phases of the project get very hands-on and almost step more into a game director sort of role. But he was never the guy that would do that from beginning of the project to the end. Like I think Alan, he was really good at setting the high level vision and what's really important. And he was a great finisher.
Right. Okay. But it sounded like part of the culture there was bringing in a lot of opinion, honest, even if it's brutal, to really be honest with the development process, even if it's like, hey, who's this dude from Test who's been here 3 months who's telling us what to do? Like, was that like a part of the culture where like it's just that's how you guys operated?
Well, I think it was. There's confusion early on, and I think if my feedback stunk, then I probably wouldn't have been there very long. But I think, the combination, I think I was giving good critical feedback that was making the game better. And, I just slowly established credibility. Plus I could, easily defeat anyone on the dev team. So I think that always helped.
Come on, let's play around.
Go ahead,
Aaron.
I was gonna ask, like, so 2 questions. Do you think you had a little bit of imposter syndrome, maybe, to help like fuel like how you were feeling the vibe in the room? And the second, go ahead, answer that one.
Give me the second question.
Okay, so that, and then to piggyback on that is like, did you? Because there isn't really like, I know that there's like there was an editor in Warcraft 2. Did y'all have like an editor that you could jump into and start doing stuff, or were you just kind of like writing notes? Like what was your like day to day? Like were you in the game, so you were actually making stuff too, or was it more just like language feedback?
A few things. So I'm gonna tell you another thing that I think is key to all this, because going back to one of the things Alex was talking about is so this happened before my time at Blizzard, but I do think it's foundational to how the culture evolved. Is Alan will tell the story about Lost Vikings and how they developed it, and they felt very proud of how intuitive and easy to play it was, and the different mechanics. And then there was the day where they went to the local software store where the game was being demoed. You could just go up to the controller and play it. And they saw a kid go up there, and they're really excited to watch them play. I picked it up, and there was this really simple ability, with the shield character, and he just didn't figure out how to use it, dropped the controller, and left. But it was really, I think, foundational, because Alan will tell the story. And what I think happened at that point was they really started leaning into getting external validation and playtesting more and more. And I think that really grew into the culture and became really powerful over time. But I think that was kind of the starting point. Going to the imposter syndrome thing, I should have had imposter syndrome. I don't know. I just think I was either too dumb, ambitious, or probably the other thing is like another thing I've kind of learned about myself over time. And I think this got in my way as a leader is, I'm on the spectrum a bit. So I think there's just a bit of, I don't know better. So I will end up, bull in the china shop on things where I should, maybe hold my tongue or, maybe have more imposter syndrome. I just don't think I thought about it.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I think. Oh, go ahead. Keep going.
Oh, I was going to answer the second part of the question, and then on the, what was I doing? So some was just feedback, things I'd write up. Some was in meetings. Another example was I remember one time when Optich, who was the project lead and lead programmer, he sent out an email to the company going, "Hey, I'm starting to write the AI for the 3 different races and want to get feedback from the company." What I did was I wrote up my build orders, which at the time that wasn't a thing yet. It's just how I thought about things when I played the game. I'm like, oh, on probe 7, I do this. On probe 9, I do that. So I just sent him my, kind of my build orders and how I approached expansion and all the rest. And he's like, this is great. I can just turn this into a script. So I pretty much just literally took my build orders and put it into a script.
Like a game design document. Like just
I didn't think of it like that, but it helped me again. And then the editor, that's another thing I think Blizzard did really, really well was they would make really good tools for themselves that were so good they could publish to the community. But it meant that's how they built the game. So I was definitely making some multiplayer maps. So there's some multiplayer maps that are in the first StarCraft that I did, like Lost Temple was probably one of the more famous ones that I worked on. So I did some of that too. But that was a good example where there wasn't like there was level designers on StarCraft, but there was a lot of contribution for multiplayer levels from across the team. So I definitely contributed there too.
Cool. Right on. So I mean, the part of my fascination with this part of the journey is just the insight into. Well, I'm always just fascinated about different teams, like what their approach is like, especially teams that have a consistent track record for producing excellence. Like, what are they doing? What are they doing differently?
Yeah.
And just like. One thing has always been very clear to me is like what we do, and I guess entertainment in general is just it's very iterative. Like the first thing is rarely the thing, and hearing about how you sort of your entry into that culture and how you impacted a game like StarCraft is fascinating. I think it's a little different from traditional game dev that Alan sort of brought you in as like almost like a voice from the outside, and then you brought you quickly onto the dev team.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing too, and I think there's a lot of things that Blizzard did, we did when I was part of Blizzard, felt kind of intuitive versus really strategic or intentional. But again, when I reflect back on it, I think it really helped build the DNA. I think there's a real ethos of hiring from the community. So I think to some extent I fit in that bucket. They hired the devs that did the Kali protocol, and that became part of the BattleNet team. So there's a real ethos of just hiring people that knew how to make things from the community itself.
Yeah. We would do that. We would do that too, like Chris Barrett and Paul Bertone, who Chris ended up being game director on I think Destiny 2 for a while. But they were building community maps, like for Myth. And it makes, when you think about it, it makes so much sense, because those are the people who are just leaning so far in, and like have a passion. And it makes a lot of sense.
Not only do they have the passion, but like these things I've learned about as teams have gotten bigger and overly specialized, in my opinion, is you get so far away from the player and really be able to learn the player perspective. If you're just coming up as a technical artist or a junior animator on a large team, you don't really get that perspective that even a mod maker gets, where it's like, I have to publish a thing, and players are going to give me feedback, and they're going to play or not play. And just doing a lot of those reps and listening to players, I think, helps game devs. Probably where I got, and when I reflect backwards, where I got that the most was running my D&D campaign for my friends. Because like in the old days of RPG campaign, we did a whole bunch of different ones, but and I love that we would rotate who was going to be the game master, dungeon master, but pretty quickly my friends just appointed me the permanent dungeon master. So we ended up having, like a 2, 3, 4 year long campaign that I just ran, whenever we got together.
Awesome.
And again, there's nothing about learning about players when you're trying to do entertainment for your friends, because then you kind of learn the real deal, because you learn pretty quickly if you didn't really do a good session, suddenly no one wants to show up next week.
That's well,
it's so immediate. It's like going to the store and watching the kid play Lost Vikings and they're walking away after a second. It's like, oh shit, that wasn't what I was expecting. I gotta pivot.
I'm the most passionate about it. It's like, I just want developers on my team, and I think developers on any team should do this. Like, how do you develop that empathy and player perspective?
Yeah.
Do you still play with your friends?
Are you still playing D&D?
I'm still playing D&D, but now I'm playing in my son's campaign and his friends.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Who DMs that one?
They rotate. Like sometimes my son does it. He's actually trying to be a game designer, so he's going to college in Champlain College.
Oh, right on.
He's learning. Sometimes it's his friend.
Would you hire him at your company eventually? This is not a talent assessment question. This is a family relationship question.
What is it? Nepotism? Is that what that's called?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing.
He may listen to this episode. You just need to.
No, I've told him this stuff correctly. I just think he's at a place still as a young adult. Like, he doesn't really have that same drive and ambition that I think the people at Bonfire do. But if he developed it, I don't see why not. I would be worried about the nepotism thing, only from the standpoint of, I'm sure it would get weird for the other devs and how they would work with him. But I'd love to make games with him now.
I've worked the farm a bit. Put him in some retail. Get him some character.
Yeah, for sure.
It is interesting to think about, sort of the next generation of game developers. This actually is a wholly separate question that I really wanted to ask you about. I'm going to just jump ahead a little bit. I want to talk about the World of Warcraft.
Well, I was going to tell you one more story though, just to finish the one on the D&D.
Yes.
So my friends I did with D&D though, they eventually became big World of Warcraft players too. So I would always bring them to BlizzCon, and that was where we talk about things. So
you played a lot of UO. I gotta imagine that was pretty influential in.
Yeah, I played a ton of UO. I played a ton of EverQuest. So yeah, I actually ran one of the top EverQuest guilds for a while.
Okay,
oh, nice.
That was how I met Jeff Kaplan and ended up hiring Jeff Kaplan.
Okay,
he was in my guild.
It totally
Oh.
tracks your. So this seems to be
The community
consistent for
thing.
you, Rob.
Yeah.
Is that you
Mhm.
you are a player. You know, you're like, and I don't mean that in the
Yeah.
You were
the
playing.
bling sense, but maybe that too. But you like games. I mean, you play
I-
D&D. You're
I'd say
you're
more
the
than I
DM.
love.
Yes, and that has had a direct impact and reflection on the people that you've met, the expertise that you have around the very fine points of design, and I think that's so important. It's like, I think that's
Yeah,
awesome.
like I love playing games. I love talking to players that love games. Even when maybe the feedback hurts your feelings, and I love game developers. Again, all the rough edges or whatever. Like I think it's a pretty special industry today. I know we're going through.
Do you have
you
like
know,
a favorite kind of?
maturity.
Do you have like a favorite kind of game? Like, oh, I love RTS. Like RTS is one thing, and then you have your RPG, your action RPG. Do you have like something you lean to? Like right now, are you excited about any kind of game? Are you playing anything?
Come on,
No, I'm
Aaron.
probably-
He's making a huge game right now. It's got to
No,
be that.
Yeah. I mean, he did RTS, and
No, I was going to say, like, I would say, I don't know the right term. I've heard the term variety gamer in recent times. Like, I definitely am not, either as a player or as a developer, focused on a genre.
okay,
You
that's
know,
cool.
Like, I've enjoyed a lot over the years, like, even when you look at my toys, you can kind of get a
Yeah,
flavor of it.
Yeah,
the
you've
Boba
got
Fett. That's
yeah.
Boba Fett, right?
Oh, yeah, that's Boba Fett.
Dude, that's a.
Well, it's more obvious, but it's like I played a ton of Street Fighter 2 back when that was in the
Yeah.
zeitgeist. I've played RTS games, shooters, played a ton. And one of my favorite games of all time is Animal Crossing. Like
That's a
even me
great
and my
game.
wife,
Yeah.
even me and my wife got married in Kyoto, partially because of the influence of Nintendo
Oh,
and Animal
wow.
Crossing.
Wow.
So
That's cool.
yeah, so I wouldn't say that I really focus on one genre or the rest. I mean, there's obviously certain types of motivations I like in games and things that I think I'm better at designing. It's like I love playing those big open world RPGs. I don't think I would be the best at creating them though. So there's things like that.
Right on.
All right.
But so how did World of Warcraft get started? Because I remember when that was in development, like it was, I think, Aaron, we were in Chicago together working then when WoW came out, I think. And I just remember, you remember Christopher MacArthur? Christopher was like an early Riot guy.
I made a game with him.
Yeah, Christopher was like, he came into the office, he had just stayed up all night. WoW had just come out, played all night, and none of the rest of us had gotten in yet. And we were like, so how is it? And he's like, it's fucking amazing.
It is. It is.
And nobody really knew. I mean, that's my memory. Is like there was like, I think there was maybe speculation that this could end up being too big to be successful or whatever, but it really worked.
I played it for 3 months straight. I got injured. I lived in Germany at the time. I played it for 3 months without a job. Like I would wake up at 8 a.m., sign on, and play until 10 p.m. for 3 straight.
Weren't you working then?
No, I got injured,
No.
so I took like
Oh.
medical leave for a while, and it was
You got carpal
It was
tunnel,
so
and so
much
you spent your injury time playing WoW.
No, you could play with the Wakem. Like,
Okay.
anyways, thanks for those
How
3
did-
months.
Yes. How did that project get started, and what was the dev
Yeah.
like on that? What were
Yeah,
some
so
of
I'll
the
set
big
the table
moments?
on that one. So one of the things that kept on happening at Blizzard during that era and before it is Blizzard always tried to split into 2 teams. That was always kind of the dream. Like, how do we get 2 different teams going? And historically, it never really happened. It always ended up with the teams end up having to merge back together on one of the games. So the next version of this was right after StarCraft. So one team was being run by Mike O'Brien, and he's I think one of the best technologists of all time. The inventor of BattleNet, like super smart, and he was doing what was called Warcraft Legends that would eventually turn into Warcraft 3. Pat Wyatt, who's also a phenomenal engineer and entrepreneur, he was doing Team 2. And Team 2 was going to work on a game that I think the code name was Nomad at the time. And it was going to be a squad-based console game. And after about a year or so, that game didn't seem like it was making enough progress. And Alan came back from a sabbatical, and something he kind of did here and there, like he would get really burned out, take 6 months off, sometimes a year off, and then come back in and re-engage. So he came back in, helped make the decision on shutting down that project. But many of us have been talking about, what would a Warcraft MMO look like? Because going back, there's a ton of us that were playing a ton of MMOs. I was playing a lot of EverQuest. Alan was playing a lot of Dark Age of Camelot. And, I think there's a few of us, especially on what eventually was the Warcraft 3 team, that, we want to do that as our next game. But then Alan decided to repurpose Team 2 into being the World of Warcraft team. So he came in, and he was, on that one, he literally was the game director, kind of lead designer. So he really got that team going, re-pivoted it and started growing it out. But, me and Alan's relationship at the time was, we pretty much at this point talked every single day. We had lunch together just about every day and just talked about each other's games. So I was always pulling him into Warcraft 3 meetings and, trying to make all the design decisions on that. And then, we do the same thing with World of Warcraft, where I'd be pretty involved, but he was driving it. So a lot of those kind of early foundational things, was really him driving. And there's definitely a few different things that I think he really stood his ground on, which is like, I don't know if you remember, but at that time you always had to do hard zones to go to different zones in these MMOs. And he really wanted more of a seamless world. So he really pushed on that a bunch. I think, really, pushed a lot on what the world would feel like. And then Chris Metzen was one of the really early devs on it, and he was also on the Warcraft 3 team. So he spanned across. And he's just, I don't know, one of the most creative, talented world builders I've ever seen. Like, he's just on a whole different level. And he would just whiteboard up, the zones and the factions and what's the drama going on between the zone and the boss. And not only could he put all that out there, but I think what he did so well was he would leave plenty of open room for the rest of the team to fill in the gaps and be creative. So you get sketched on a whiteboard, you talk about the big themes, but then it really enabled the artists and the quest designers to now be creative within that box. So I think that was a lot of the early dev. And then trying to crack the art style. At first they were trying to do a more realistic style, because that was kind of more the norm. And, I'm sure you know this, Alex, but I feel like it's always easy in retrospect to say, oh, here's all the things we figured out. But none of those things are linear. So on every project, there's something is always not coming together the way you'd want, and it's a crisis. And eventually, hopefully, you hit that epiphany moment. So the art style is a really good example, where there's an artist, Brandon Idle, I think is now up at Valve, and he took one of Samwise's characters from War 3 and just plopped him into WoW one day. And they were just like, oh, that's it. And it cracked the art style, right? So just there's all these things that were happening.
Well, was it all from the beginning? Was it always in the, I'm guessing, but I don't know. Was it always in the Warcraft universe?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, WoW was an interesting one because a lot of the foundational debates just weren't there, as far as there was never thinking of we should do a different world. Warcraft was always the obvious world. And I think it really benefited a lot from Warcraft 3 being a little bit further ahead too. So if you really look at a lot of those, the big story arcs and world bosses and all that, all those were Warcraft 3 storylines. So if you look at the Warcraft 3 storylines through, Frozen Throne, that pretty much was WoW plus the first 2 expansions.
Pretty cool.
All the way through the
I have a question about community and Dota. How did that go? How did you guys handle that? That was a huge deal. Did y'all ever? Were y'all why didn't you hire him? Or
well, there's a story there too. I mean, so I'll get to that. I'll sketch a little bit more history, so the context is set for it. But as once Warcraft 3 finished up and I was working on the expansion, I was starting to get pulled more and more, I think, into World of Warcraft stuff. And another area that I think well-intentioned idea was, we're going to have a different designer for each class, but they just weren't really coming along cohesive. So I just asked Alan, can I just take over all the class design? So, even though I was still on the Warcraft 3 team, I ended up just taking over all the classes and designing them one by one. And then the other thing that was starting to happen was Alan, I think, was starting to burn out again. He also met a girl that became his wife, and I think Alan always knew
there's always a meta girl in the story.
Yeah. And well, the thing about Alan is, like, he's just one of those personalities. Like, he doesn't know how to create balance for himself, I think, when he's in a job like Blizzard. So I think he wisely knew if he kept doing it, he was not going to end up marrying this girl and not end up having a family with her, which eventually he did. So he eventually made the decision to leave over a year before WoW came out. And that was when, him, Mike, Frank, Paul sat me and Chris down and said, hey, we want to make you guys executives, and Rob, we need you to now take over WoW. And we were just starting up StarCraft 2 at the time. So we need you to do both StarCraft 2 and finish World of Warcraft.
Easy
it's a couple
peasy,
little
dude.
projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a run. That was how far into your journey at Blizzard was that? How many years was that?
I mean, that has to be around 2003. It was about when that happened.
Okay.
So I was going to get to the Dota thing and then we can return though, but this is about the time period that Dota was becoming a big thing. So it was I think some people are like, oh, Blizzard was so dumb. They missed Dota entirely. It's like, we did not miss it. We obviously saw it. We thought it was awesome. We wanted to do something with it. I totally had Ice Frog out to Blizzard and chatted with him and talked about the possibility of doing stuff. He was interesting at the time because I think he was really getting courted. So he even had an agent and all this stuff. And it didn't really feel like that was going to work really well for us in our structure. And we knew, because I was like, I'm now straddling 2 projects as basically the game director. And the other thing that I think we did not serve ourselves well is we hadn't really built the right ranks of game design behind me and Alan. We were pretty thin on high level, really senior designers. So I had already pulled a lot of my favorite senior devs that had a really good game design mind from the StarCraft 2 team to the WoW team. So it just wasn't really something that felt like we could put any talent around it, do something with Dota. And it really felt like if we focused on Dota, we were going to lose WoW.
Mm.
Right
so,
on. Sometimes you got to make those hard choices. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm really good friends now with the Riot founders. So we've talked about this too. I'm really happy that a company like Riot formed around Dota. Like, I'm not bitter at all. I think it's awesome that game came to fruition and that company now exists. In an ideal world, would we have been able to do it? Of course.
Yeah. But it is, I agree with you. I think one of the things that I really love to see is when folks have, like, who I've worked with in the past, and kind of go on to, we were talking about the Second Dinner guys, but they both came out of Blizzard. I got to work with Hamilton at Bungie, and just seeing companies like that kind of just like grow from from the, what do you call it, the diaspora, maybe. It's
yeah, for sure.
That's
the thing
that's awesome.
the thing that was interesting about Blizzard too was I would say that we always had some groups leaving. Like, I think in the early era there is all these little disgruntled exoduses that happened. And I think we went through an era where people generally didn't leave. Like, post WoW, people didn't leave. We actually had shipping WoW was a little challenging. I would say that there was not a lot of, there was a lot of resentment on the team, and I wouldn't say it was a high morale team when we shipped.
Was it just like a lot of crunch at the end?
I think it was a combination of factors. I think there's just some team culture things. I think, Alan wasn't necessarily even getting along with the project lead at the time. Like I'll give you like one example I can more speak from. When I came full time onto the team, I think there was a lot of, I think the design team was overall maybe a little bit too green. And I think many of them ended up being total amazing designers and stars. But I think at that time, they would sometimes send in design specs to the engineers and the programmers, and it wasn't spec'd in a way that would do the right things for the servers. And I think maybe some of the engineers were a little bit in that say no sort of mentality a little bit. So there's a lot of friction.
Yeah.
Like one of the engineers, one of the more infamous versions of this, like I'd have a class designer. He would send in spells and abilities in our task inspector, and sometimes the gameplay server engineer would just send back "bite me." So,
that's mature. That's mature. Yeah. Good communication. Amazing. So how big was that team when you shift? How many folks were on
60.
Oh wow, that is so small. Now the MMOs are like 2,000 people. What about StarCraft 2? How big was that team? That game is amazing too, dude. I love StarCraft.
Well, that's one of the greatest games of all time.
Similar when we launched, probably 60. Yeah, Diablo 3 was probably like 70 when we launched. Overwatch, I think, was 65.
How big is your? We need to talk about Bonfire, but like, how big is your team now?
We're just under 70 full-time internal people. And we have contractors now.
Not mobile, right? Honestly, you're in a place. You're in a location. You're in a space. You're not mobile or what?
We're a little bit hybrid.
Hybrid. Okay.
Pandemic is where we changed.
Yeah.
We were a little hybrid before that, to be fair. But our version of hybrid was we had a couple of very senior developers up in San Francisco that would still fly down at least once a week.
Okay.
And now we're a little more hybrid. We're still time zone. Over half our staff is still in Orange County. Some are a little more spread out. We have a little pod up in Vancouver, but we've stayed in the same time zone.
How I'm just curious, like, how often do you go into an office?
I think it's on average between 2 to 3 days a week.
Yeah.
So usually Mondays and Fridays, most of us stay home, and then Tuesday, not a lot of people come in, and then most people come in Wednesday, Thursdays right now.
Yeah. Aaron and I were, earlier today, we were just talking about how the current, whatever, the incumbent workflow of Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 is almost maybe a thing of the past. It's like, I don't know. I don't know what your sort of work schedule is like, Rob, but I, if I'm within reach of the keyboard, I'm usually working on something.
Well, I'm launching a game this year, so I don't think it's the right.
He's like, I'm not taking it.
Right on. All right. Well, so let's see. I had like sort of two big questions for you. I haven't asked either yet, and we're right at an hour.
Well, let me just finish the thing on the design programming thing now a little bit. So what I'd end up doing is once the bite me list got too long, I'd go sit down with the engineer, and we had a contentious relationship early. I could tell you the same thing, but I think I just took the time to talk through it and go, well, here's the design intent of the spell. Here's what we're trying to achieve. He'd say, well, this is how it's going to fuck the server. I go, okay, well, tell me more about that. And go, well, what if we did this other thing? And I would just kind of build respect, bite me spell by bite me spell, and then we'd collaborate. Some of those things would go in, and players would really like them. And I just felt like I just had to rebuild that design credibility all over again, like I did early at StarCraft. And then the other thing I had to do in this era was, obviously, I can't be game director of 2 games at the same time. So I really put my mind to, how do I build out Blizzard game design as a department? Like, how do I start mentoring younger designers? How do I successfully hire designers that have experience and integrate them into our culture? I started doing GDC talks. I started coming up with things like the Blizzard design values, all of these tools to start trying to create a vocabulary for what is Blizzard game design, and what do we believe in? Like, what do our designers do? What is a career ladder for a game designer at Blizzard? So
share some of those. What's like the top 3 Blizzard design rules.
Yeah, so I mean, the first one was just a play on like easy to learn, difficult to master. I would just call it easy to learn, impossible to master. You know, because we really did try to build these very deep system games that have, you know, a lot of skill differentiation. That was one of them. Another one was like control is king. You know, it's like that responsiveness, frame rate. You know, it's those things that you never get credit for in a review, but everyone will leave your game if you don't get it right.
Yeah.
They'll knock you too. They'll be like,
well, nowadays, sophistication with players are different now. So nowadays they do knock you, but I would say back in that era, the sophistication with players wasn't quite there yet. Another example is like avoid the grand reveal. You know, I think a lot of developers can be very precious about whatever they're building, and they don't want to show it till it's perfect. You know, and I really want people to be collaborative early on. One that was maybe a little bit more unique was like make everything overpowered. So this was something that I really believed in from like the StarCraft days, because even when you're like, you know, doing game balance on an RTS, you know, it's like people are always going to play about what's OP, what's overpowered, and also what are the things that are underpowered. So, you know, I really liked spiky strategies. So, you know, going back to the Grunt Rush story, like, you know, like we had our own version of StarCraft, which was like 6 pool Zergling strategy. And then there's the 4 pool version. There's offensive towering for Protoms.
That's a really interesting one.
And like every time I saw that stuff, I would really want to investigate it before I would nerf it. Because what I wanted was as many of those spiky strategies as possible, as long as if the person on the other side, they had a reasonable chance to counter it if they did reasonable things and were really paying attention.
That's a really good one, Rob. That's like kind of like balancing to the extremes instead of balancing to the middle. Like in the middle is just like mushy and soft and
it's boring.
Boring. Yeah. I love that. All of them are gold. That one is, that's great stuff.
I really like the first one. That's like easy to play, hard to master.
Oh, and I totally relate to the avoid the grand reveal. I remember we were working on this game. It was like a castle sieging game, and the AI it was a single player game, and the AI that would defend these castles was supposed to be the big thing, and it was like 6 months of work on it to get a demo that was like too little, too late. You know, it's like. Yeah. Would have been nice to have some mini reveals along the way.
It's always hard. I mean, I always think creative people, anyone, but I think especially creative people, you know, you can be really sensitive putting your work out there, especially when you know it sucks.
Right. This is a work in progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Because you know people are going to have, you know, 90% of the feedback you already know. And it's really hard to not keep on saying, I know.
Yeah.
Right. But another one actually I think was interesting was make it a bonus. So this one also had a hard learning. Like there is a system in World of Warcraft called the rest system. So I had this idea, this vision where I wanted to really encourage people to have maybe some healthy play sessions and not play 24 hours straight. I also was you know, trying to get people to feel the sense of being home in the city. So I had this kind of idea where, okay, well, you know, if you logged out in a city, then, you know, the next time you logged in, you would be able to be at gain full experience for a longer period of time. And then after you played for a few hours, your experience would go down to like half or something. Wow, did I get lots of community hate for that one.
Yeah, I love that feature. That was one of my favorite ones because I wouldn't play for like 2 days and you come back like, hey, and you get a reward.
Yeah. You're rewarding me for leaving? I hate you.
So I did, you know, I'm like, well, can I save the feature? You know, because I still believed in the vision. So I, you know, because, you know, sometimes you just have to kill them too. But this one, I'm like, I have a thought on how I can maybe save it. And basically I just went into the system and all I did was I kept all the math the same, but I recharacterized it as when you're a city and you log off, you accumulate rest bonus.
Yeah.
So when you come in, you get twice as much experience.
Right.
And then eventually just goes
instead of half.
I love that.
Smart.
I love that feature. That's a great feature.
Yeah.
And with the color too, you would know it was like blue, and they would like
right.
Yeah.
But what was funny was the community. I had that change, and a few people knew what I did, but most of the community is like, "Oh, it's great now." I'm like, "Awesome."
Yeah.
So it's like another lesson in when you use the carrot or the stick.
Yes, presentation matters. All right. Well, so here's one of my two questions for you, which really the question is like, and I don't know if this is correctly worded, but it's basically like, what is it like to start over? Like, you spent a long time at Blizzard, at an incredible run. It's like top of the world, and now you have a new company, and you're building a new game, new team. I'm sure you've worked with a lot of the folks on your team for a long, long time, but in some ways it's kind of like starting over. What's that like for you emotionally, around like excitement, fear, all that stuff? What are you hoping for? What seems different this go around? It's like, it's 2026 right now, and you started at Blizzard when, in
97, I think.
97, yeah. So it's been a hot minute. The world is different. Tastes have changed. How is it? How are you feeling?
That's a big question.
I asked this question because I have done this too. I have lots of feels. I imagine you do also.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and we've been around so long now. I mean, it's like each year there's a different version of the roller coaster. I mean, I will say like when I joined Blizzard, because a lot of people, they obviously know how successful Blizzard was, but in the year I was there, I mean, we're still kind of betting the company on every game release, right? Until WoW came out. That's really what shifted the calculus for the company. But before that, it had to hit. So I thought I knew how that felt, but yeah, starting a new company, it really adds a lot of pressure in that way, because you're building the company, you're building the team from scratch, in our case, we decided to build a new game and a new genre and a new IP. So that's a bunch of new also. So
you're not writing your own game engine, are you?
We did not intend to, because we really started on the Unity path. But, they had a really, ambitious vision for where they wanted to take their engine for AAA. And I think, as we all know, Unity's pivoted a bit. So we got a bit orphaned on, their ambitious roadmap that they pivoted away from. So we're still obviously using Unity, but we've had to put a lot more engine into it. Thought what to do.
Okay. Yeah. So you're operating at a high degree of difficulty.
Yes. But I think, when I did the calculus of whether I do it or not, I still felt like I had a lot of game development in me. And I was at a place in my career where I felt like, hey, if I was ever going to do it, this is time. I feel like, I didn't know anything about raising money, but I felt like I could do that. I felt like, I could hire a senior team. So why not give it a shot? And I think, one of the things that drove me the most was just partially seeing what was happening at Blizzard, going back to what you're even talking about with smaller teams, after we shipped WoW and we, went through the merger with Activision, and there was a lot of pressure to really grow the WoW team. And to Activision's credit, I mean, they really know how to utilize these big teams. They had 1,000 devs on Call of Duty, and they're shipping them every year. And I think as we tried to do that, we just realized, we just have a different development culture. And, really want to, produce the sort of products that we are producing. You're not going to be able to do that with the factory approach. And we tried, and what happened was, as the bigger the WoW team got, the slower we got. Because you start taking, some really incredibly talented developers that were leads or ICs, or even if they're leads, maybe they had a couple people. Now it's like, okay, lead quest designer is probably our best quest designer. Now you have to spend all your time mentoring 10 junior designers. So we end up going slower with less quality. So I kind of had more of an epiphany over time going, hey, I just think we have a style of game development that's more conducive to reasonable sized teams. I don't want to say small teams, but like another learning that was the Hearthstone team, which we shipped with 15 developers. So I think you could build really good product. I mean, you see it in the indie space too. You just have to really be smart about scope, approach, have the right sort of developers. So what was happening as I was leaving was that pressure to grow the teams was on every team. Overwatch was getting the mandate to double, triple, Hearthstone, same way. And a lot of the nucleus of that creative talent and leadership, wasn't fun to them anymore. Like I can speak to our game director on Arkheron. Like he was, like when they built Overwatch, he was in the design pit of 7 designers. This is how many designers were on that team. And they all had their areas of responsibility, but they talked about everything all the time. So they all felt very connected in this shared sense of ownership. As the team expanded, he got a UI features team. And now this is your team of 8 people. And this is your part of the game that you're going to work on. It's just not as fun. It's not really how you grow. So as the teams grew, what I would view all that core foundational talent and that team collaboration you only build through doing things together for years, they lost all that.
Yeah, it all got diluted. Yeah.
So a lot of my passion was, well, what if, you made games and you just put the team one rung higher than, the franchise or business success. I mean, they're both important. So I'm not saying it's either or. I'm just saying, if you really build a great team, what if you trust them to take care of the player and not cause them to overexpand or unnaturally expand and lose the culture? Because to me, that core talent is the irreplaceable bit.
Yeah. The project is the team.
Yeah.
That's something somebody said to me a long time ago, which has always stuck with me. Yeah, it's a kind of a euphemism. Okay, so it sounds like part of your vision for Bonfire is developing games in a way where you feel is better serves the player, but starts with really taking care of the team that's doing the creative work.
Yeah, from a leadership point of view, it does get nuanced. And I'll be honest, like even within Bonfire, I think the nuance gets confusing because I want the game devs to really be focused on the player and the player experience and the product. I think as you get more into the leadership, because I'm not the one putting pixels on screen, right?
I was going to ask, what's your day-to-day like now? Are you on Zoom
I
calls with investors? Or are you got the editor open and you're
Animal Crossing a little bit here and there?
Are you sitting down with the engineer who sends the bite me emails? Like what's your day-to-day like?
No, I'm probably more the Gandalf of the team at this point. It's like just trying to give wisdom and mentorship. And again, I feel like a lot of my job is I just try to do whatever I can to make the team more successful. And sometimes it means, usually what it means is being in the area of the company that doesn't really have a lot of leadership right now and trying my best to learn that job and fill that gap until I can hire someone better and fire myself from that job and do the next one. On the game development side, it's, it can be tricky for me, because I know I'm not in the guts of the game. So I want to offer some perspective and wisdom however I can, but I don't want people to take it as, oh, the CEO told me to do that. That becomes a really tricky dynamic. It's like, I just want my opinions to be heard on the value of the opinions is when it comes to game dev. And I try to be explicit. If I'm going to tell you to do it, I'll tell you to do it. But it's hard, because a lot of my company comes from bigger companies and they can't unsee the CEO hat. It was the same. Admirals can't give advice. So
that's a
it
good
does
one.
make it challenging, right?
I haven't heard that one before. You've got a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
Admiral
Read a
can't
book.
give advice. Yeah. All right. Well, my other question was about I wrote this down as a question and then I changed the question because here's what my original thought was like, and you reminded me when you were talking about your son kind of going possibly pursuing a career in game design, and just like what the world is, what the context of of video games are like now versus like when we were first getting started decades ago, and how tastes just change over time. And like, so my original question is like, how are you grappling with the fact that tastes are very different today than they were 30 years ago? And then I was like, well, are tastes really different? Like, do people really just want to like have fun with their friends? Like, like those Blizzard rules that you laid out of easy to learn, impossible to master, things like that. Is that just still consistent or not? So I changed my question. And my question is like really more like, from your point of view, have tastes changed? or maybe not. I don't know.
I think the answer is yes, but I think maybe the framing I would challenge a little bit.
Yeah.
I think tastes have always been changing. I don't think it's like today is very different than, let's just say, 30 years ago. I think, even look at the history of Blizzard during the time I was there, right? Like RTS games were in the zeitgeist, and then MMOs were, then MOBAs came online, so, if you look at RTS right now, it's hard to go back and build what people would call an RTS. I think a lot of the play patterns and motivations have popped up in other genres. But I think, like what we'd conventionally usually call a genre, like RTS or something, I think what usually happens is a lot of developers see, those play patterns, and they get inspired by it, and they do different versions and innovate within kind of that field. But over time, kind of have done all the things that feel like you can innovate within it anymore. So either, you can keep on serving a smaller audience, which, I'd say fighting games might be an example of a genre like that. It's still out there and vibrant. Are you ever going to see, another breakout zeitgeist moment like when Street Fighter II was hot in the arcade? I mean, probably not. So, if you want to continue to build games that might have that sort of impact, you always have to innovate and find the next thing. I've never been driven by demographics. Like, oh, let me just see what the kids are playing now, and, maybe I can make a game that will appeal to them. I think, looking at some of those design values, I think those are kind of timeless. I think what changes is, what are the new play patterns, the innovation in genres, what's, the IPs or fantasy. And I think what you have to do, what I believe in at least, is, hey, if you have really creative developers and you encourage them to make things that they're passionate about and they love, it will find an audience. Mm-hmm. And I think, if you look at most entertainment industries, I think songwriters will tell you that, artists will tell you that, like they have to make something that they really love first.
Right. Something in their own voice. Like how are you approaching that at Bonfire? I mean, like, so you're focusing on one game. Like how did you come up with the direction that felt true to that voice, but was maybe fresh?
Yeah, there's kind of a fun story. I've told it a few times. Actually, I just did it at a GDC talk too. But early on, we didn't have enough of a dev team to truly make a game yet. So a lot of the first year and a half or so was, recruiting, maybe doing some light prototypes. And a lot of what I was just encouraging people to do is, hey, just pitch games, and at first, it'd be pretty interesting because you would get, let's say an artist who's never pitched a game before and kind of get 200 slides of artist reference, but you don't really understand what the gameplay is. And, then the other side, my co-founders comes from more the business side, he might start it with a music video and get you into a vibe. So eventually what we did was we had to come up with a template. So we called it a game seed template. And you only get like basically 5 slides, and each slide has a question that you just have to answer on that slide. And this is the phase where, hey, using other game reference or movies is totally fair game. And there'd be something about the world, like what's kind of the gameplay elevator pitch. So very simple. And then, once we got about 35 of those, and we're getting to the point now where it felt like we could probably build something, we had to get a little more serious. So we had all the games like laid out on a table, actually in my house, because we started the company in my house. And I gave, very scientifically, I gave everyone 5 Post-it notes, and they had to sign them and just put them on the 5 ones that you think we should pursue. And
so that was open voting. That was open voting.
That's open voting.
Yeah.
And the thing here, though, is like we weren't picking the what. What I was trying to do was just see where the passion of the studio was,
where the gravity was,
on, what you want to work on more. Yeah.
Yeah, and some just had all the Post-it notes. Some had none. The ones I think were really interesting that had a scattering of them, and that ended up getting us into good like product value conversations. Like one example was like I pitched a game called Roar is what I called it, and the idea was kind of a Fast and the Furious wrapper and mobile racing game, competitive racing game, and it was one of these ones that got mixed. And I think the thing that really stopped it from getting enough interest is it really didn't have a rich imaginary world. So that became key. It's like, okay, well, we know that's the DNA of the studio.
Oh, that's cool.
So I kind of created these product values that I felt like were going to align us. And then we picked 7 of those to work on as a team to do a true, like something we could use with a publisher, like a real pitch deck. But we worked on them for 2 to 3 weeks as a team. And the rule on day 1 was, doesn't matter if you pick this or not, you have to fall in love with this. You have to put yourself in the mindset we're making this thing. But, we created mood boards with kind of what we thought the art world could be. We, designed out what we thought some of the game systems would be. So, tech stack considerations, things like that. So we did those sequentially, and then we pitched those on the same day, and then we did another process. This one wasn't really a voting one as much, but took us a couple of days to have all the conversations. But one of the key things we did was, okay, everybody, stack rank them in the order that you think Bonfire should make them. And any that you think we should never make, just leave off your stack ranking. So that gives us a much more rich data and conversation. And at first, I think 6 of the 7 had at least one number 1 vote. And I don't think less than 4 showed up on everyone's stack ranking. And it's all 7 appeared on many people's.
How long did this take? Like, what was the time frame?
Well, that took about, it's like 2 weeks per, so it was like 3 months or so. It's not like we're only doing that. Just want to be clear. It's like, but a lot of it was kind of focused on that. And I think the other benefit though is the first time we started working as a team.
Right on.
So at the end of it, everyone had to defend their stack rankings. And this is where I think things really got interesting because people took very different perspectives on how to do it. Some people just went for, hey, this is what I think is going to make the most money, which I always think is funny. Like anybody thinks that they're going to be able to predict that at the pitch level, but people continue to do that. Some came at it from a point of passion. One of our artists was like, hey, I'm really good at organic modeling and some of these hard service modeling. So that's why I stacked them a little different, like with my capabilities. One of our engineers sequenced him through the smartest way to build the tech stack. Yeah. So after a couple of days, I still wasn't 100% sure how I was going to drive the final decision, but I was starting to get a sense just from how the conversations were going. So I said, hey, before we really get into like the Thunderdome, I want you to re-stack rank them now, but I'm going to give you a prompt this time. Stack rank them in the order that you think this team has the best chance of making the best version of a game out of. And that one ended up almost unanimous. And that was what was called Colt, then we codenamed it Torch, and now it's Arkheron.
Right on. That is a very cool process.
Like filtration.
Did you have to set any rules like not allowed to put corgis in your pitch.
No, we had that issue in our studio. We did something similar,
hilarious.
and someone put a corgi, and I'm like, everyone's gonna vote for that, and it got all the votes.
Oh no, we had several clickbaity seeds.
That's awesome. When does the game come out?
Later this year. Like, we're gonna go into early access.
Do you have a publisher or are you self-publishing?
We're self-publishing, which that's a whole another stress and difficulty level thing.
And I'm assuming, actually, I apologize, I don't actually know the answer to this question, but I assume it's going to be like premium purchase with stuff.
Yeah, we haven't got really specific yet.
Okay,
but
so
yeah,
if that's not announced yet, I'm not trying to out this.
We've talked about it. We just haven't done the blog post with all the details. But yeah, the idea is to have an upfront purchase, and we're debating a lot of what that price point should be. And then over time, we'll stand up our cosmetic store and have all those sorts of things too. And that because this is where a lot of the art team is obviously working on content post launch now, and they're doing a lot of really cool skins and cool animations and special. We have this thing called executes in the game where when you finish somebody off, if you want to make all their loot pop out of them, make sure they can't get just pulled up by their teammates, then you go through this animation, and there's all these kind of customized executes that the team's doing. So I think that stuff's gonna be really cool. We're just really trying to approach it of, hey, let's just make sure it's really cool cosmetic stuff that we call it like that people are like proud to pay for, rather than feel like they have to pay for things.
Yeah. I mean, Rob, I think with the environment situation, the whole thing that you've got going on with Bonfire is, it's very special. It's very unique. Like, I think you were able to get started at a period of time where you could set it up so you could have this really right-sized team that could take the time. Spend 3 months finding your voice at the beginning, finding the right project to build, years to develop, really thinking about it the right way. I don't know if you're able to sort of step out and get the perspective for like what's happening in the industry right now, but like I'm so excited for what you guys are building, because you've had the chance to do it in a very, I think, way that's just right for you, and your team. So it's just, I'm really happy for you. I mean, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks. And I mean, I'm not going to stand up here and say 8-year dev cycle is the ideal approach. That'd be the takeaway. What I'll say is, like, every game development is a journey, and you always like plan for, we're going to do this in 3 to 4 years, and inevitably it ends up taking longer. You don't plan for that, but I think it's like when you're really trying to make something great and you're just kind of willing to, okay, we hit that dead end. What's the right thing to do and what's the easy thing to do? And then the right thing sometimes takes a lot longer.
Yeah. I always tell people to expect things in games to take twice as long as you plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 more times after that.
Yeah. You're not going to ship in the same window as GTA 6, are you?
We're definitely trying to avoid that.
Right on. All right, Rob.
Yeah, I think there's going to be no games released like 2 weeks before.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't think any work is going to be done. It's going to be some sort of holiday.
Nowadays, there's just so many good games coming out all the time.
Yeah.
There's so much good content for players. Like, the challenge that I think we have now is like, I think when we launched the game maybe a couple years after I left Blizzard, it had been easier because there have been so many players who were still following me or following us. Now it's like, I'm like a relic from an old era. So it's like, just trying to get the awareness of like, hey, we're actually making something cool, and just getting enough people to pay attention is hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody should go and wish list and sign up. Is there a sign up on your site?
Yeah, we have both the wish list and the playtest sign up.
Yeah.
So, like, going back to, I think, learnings from Blizzard, it's like, I think the best way to make a multiplayer game, and especially a competitive game, is like making it with the community and the players. But to do that, you need a bunch of players to come and play the game and give you their raw feedback and
Yeah.
time to react to it and cook. And that's, really what we want to do.
Right on. Awesome. All right, Rob, we kept you like way over. You've been way generous with your time.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. What a fascinating conversation.
When you've been in the industry as long as I have, it's like, I don't know where you want to dig into. We could even basically talk about Warcraft 3.
I know. We could do like another 3 episodes, I'm sure. And how awesome that you're, continuing the pedigree development down in SoCal. We should go hang out sometime.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for being on.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm, again, whether or not we win or lose, like I just still love game development, and I like also helping other game developers. Like you mentioned Hamilton and Ben. I think I was one of the first people to give them advice when they came out, try to help them on their way. And Bryen's done that for me, and Fergus. And so it's one of the things I love about the industry is a lot of people, I think, sometimes view developers as competitive, but it's just never been my experience. I feel like we always try to help one another.
Yeah, I mean, I think deep down we're all a bunch of gamers, so.
Yeah, super fans.
Yeah.
Like I'm still a fan. Like, it's like, I was telling you about Animal Crossing. Like I was so excited to meet the Animal Crossing game director and, just be a fan for a while and visit Nintendo. And
That's cool.
One of my favorite things is like, she surprised me where she got the Animal Crossing team to do this, characters from it for me and Jamie for our wedding. So she surprised me with that gift. Wedding.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm just, like sometimes I just pinch myself because I just get to be a fan in our industry too.
Right on. Well, thanks again, Rob, and we'll see you around.
Yeah, Rob.
Okay.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys. It was really great meeting you guys and love the conversation.
Right on. Likewise.
Thank you for listening to the Fourth Curtain Podcast. Visit us at thefourthcurtain.com to find our monthly newsletter and support the show via Patreon. The Fourth Curtain Podcast is a production of Fourth Curtain Media. Lovingly edited by Bryen Hensley of Noise Floor Sound Solutions. Video production by Sarkis Grigorian. Production support by Kimya Taheri. With community management by Doug Zartman and art production by Paul Russell. Thanks again for listening.